They say it, and it's true, that everything is getting faster. You're not getting any younger, and time is the single resource that you can never get back or get any more of. So why walk into your local comic shop blind when you can go in laser focused on the best books on the shelf?
Hi everybody, and welcome to Minute to Skim It. Yeah!
Spend 1 hour with Miss Jen and Bean, and they'll give you rapid-fire reviews of all the new comics hitting stores. Spend less time shopping and more time reading.
This is Provenance of Secrets.
This is The Heathens. I read Wolverine number 17.
Minute to Skim It, every Tuesday at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
Hey, hello all you happy people. Welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. It is Tuesday, February 22nd, and we've got a good lineup for you today. We, besides the show right now, we're going to talk about the Peacemaker season finale. Then following that is going to be Black Comic Universe with Latif. And then Minute to Skim It with Miss Jen. And then Kyle and I will be back to talk comics on in stores this week. It is Tuesday, as Kyle points out. That's 2/22/2022. And, of course, it's a Tuesday, which is pretty cool that it all lined up like that. Now, we are going, like I said, we're going to talk about the Peacemaker season finale. Before we get into that, though, I want to talk a little bit about a show I watched last night, which I know a lot of you have already seen because it's been on Disney Plus for a little while. But this is also going to sound like the oldest thing I could possibly be doing. But I've been dealing with some medical stuff. Decided I needed to take an evening away from the computer. So I sat on the edge of my bed, turned on the Beatles Get Back documentary, and crocheted. Yeah, that's a long story, but it's something new I've learned how to crochet. So I'm doing that now. And I was watching this Beatles thing, and I really put it on just for noise in the background. I like the behind the scenes stuff. And it's a Peter Jackson thing, and I know Jim Valentino was big on it. And basically, if Jim recommends something, I tend to check it out. I'm not a big Beatles fan. I was just discussing it with Kyle before the show. I respect the Beatles. I know that there's a lot of love for them, and I hold, that I totally get. There are a lot of bands that I definitely have a passion for. And it's funny, you come to bands in different times in your lives. I wasn't that big of a Who fan for a long time. And then in my early 30s, I started playing the bass guitar. And when I started playing the bass guitar, I started checking out more and more bass players out there and what they could do. And, then you suddenly realize who are the spectacular bass players and who are the mediocre ones. And the best example for me is I grew up a Kiss fan. When I was at 7 years old, I discovered who Kiss was. These guys were awesome. Kiss Meets the Fan of the Park, all that stuff. I was getting albums, and I was getting, watching their TV things, and Kiss was amazing. When I started learning to play the bass and looking at what's going on, you realize what a middle-of-the-road bass player Gene Simmons is. It's nothing spectacular. His solos are more working the crowd than it is actually playing. And I get that. And from a business standpoint, the guy's brilliant. He and Paul Stanley have made just a fortune off of that whole thing. They're showmen. It's awesome. But as a technical bass player, he's not that great. Where you move over to somebody like John Entwistle, the bassist for the Who. And when you start looking at him and the innovations he did and stuff like that, you start really appreciating what he did. And as I got to really look at the Who and what they did, I realized that he was sort of the backbone of the band, because you had four guys that were kind of maestros at what they do. But he was the one that kind of held them together. He created the pocket they could all get back into. Yeah, if the Who wanted to be the best rock band of all time, Kiss wanted to be the Coca-Cola. Yeah, that's a great. Yeah. Kiss wanted to make money, and they have. The Who wanted to play music, and they did. But each one of those guys would have been able to lead a band. They were kind of the show. So you had basically four superstars in a band when it came to the Who. You had Pete Townsend, who was an amazing guitarist and who would have led any band. And he could have, and he did on his own for a while, but Roger Daltrey's voice was just phenomenal. Keith Moon on the drums, just unbelievable. And then Entwistle on the bass. And he always created that safe zone that they could go out and do whatever they wanted and always could come back to that. Yet he still played at an incredibly high level. And there are some bass players like that, Billy Sheehan of Mr. Big is probably one of the best bass players in the world. Just some of these great guys. You ever want to check out a neat band, check out the Winery Dogs, which is Billy Sheehan, Richie Kotzen, and Mike Portnoy, the drummer from Dream Theater. And they're fantastic. But they're a small band that, haven't really gotten the notoriety they deserve yet. So when I was growing up, the Who, though, was just kind of that weird poppy music. And I was getting more into rock and kind of, and I know they're not poppy, but it's like growing up in the 70s, bands like the Beach Boys, the Beatles, the Who, they were kind of outdated for me at that point. Because when I started getting into music, I started getting into other stuff like Genesis and Springsteen, and then getting more into heavy metal and Queensryche and Metallica, and just kind of going that direction. And I kind of coming back and finding those bands. So I've never been that big of a big preamble to this. I've never been that big a fan of the Beatles. I don't particularly like John Lennon's voice. So when I do find a Beatles song that I like, it tends to either be McCartney or Harrison singing on it and not Lennon. And so when I turned it on last night, it was more of I'll let this on while I'm doing my work on the crocheting and I'll just let it play. Well, these things are long. It's 3 episodes. And I think each one is like 3.5 to 4 hours. So I got through all of the first one and well halfway through the second one and really was enjoying it, because instead of seeing them as the way the Beatles have always been presented to me, which is nigh unto gods, there isn't a middle ground with the Beatles. There isn't oh yeah, they're okay. I like some of their stuff. People seem to either worship at their feet or just don't get it. And what I got to see in this, it's not really a documentary. It was a behind the scenes thing they were shooting while trying to figure out the album Let It Be or Get Back, in the 1969, at a time where the band was starting to fall apart. There was a lot of problems, a lot of influences from Yoko and Linda McCartney, stuff like that, where the two of them would show up at rehearsals where you didn't see Ringo's wife or any of George's family. These two were more on the scene, and you'd see a lot of infighting. But it was a really interesting thing because it took away that mystique that that have been attached to the Beatles since they broke, since the Ed Sullivan Show. This godlike thing. And it just showed them as four musicians struggling to make a new album. And I think that's what I really enjoyed about watching it, was to see the human side, to see the relaxed side of it, and the stress, but also to see them just kind of goofing off or noodling around on a tune and listening to it and realize that somebody filmed the exact moment that they created a song like Get Back, or some of the songs that you're watching them be created at the moment they're being created. So from the creation point of view, it was fascinating to watch. And you could see the real personality differences. You could see how Paul was much more intense and workmanlike, and George was much more artistic and wanting to be able to get his voice out there. Ringo was more of a pacifist, kind of going with the flow. And John seems like he had kind of moved past that and was going somewhere else. And he just didn't know where he was going yet. And it was interesting seeing those four interact along with, and very casual, they dressed casual, they did things casually, where everybody else around them were in suits and were prepared and were like at their beck and call, because all anybody else there wanted was to help facilitate the creation of another album, of a live show, or of a live TV special, all this other stuff. They wanted that was, but then they had created this company called Apple specifically to be the vehicle for helping the Beatles create. And like I said, it was fascinating to watch this, because you really do see a different side to these guys. They're human. They sit around and drink and have fun and joke and suddenly break into other people's songs just for the fun of it. And they goof around and they pick on people that bug them. And it is just, it's humanizing. No longer do I, it's not this, they were brought from on high by the gods and here are the Beatles. It is now just, like I said, four musicians who are just trying after having done 13 other albums, I think it is, we're just trying to find that sound again, one more time, to make an album that everybody would like, because the expectations were here and they were trying to live up to them. And I'm looking forward to going back and finishing the series, because I know that it ends with also a live performance on a rooftop. And it is one of the last things they did together. So it is kind of, like I said, it's really interesting. Peter Jackson of the Lord of the Rings fame is the one that put this together, but all the footage was shot years and years ago, and I don't know why it didn't come out. Maybe they'll explain it in the documentary or in the series, but they sat on this for years. I mean, it was filmed in 1969. So 31, 50, 53 years, this stuff has been just sitting around. I don't know if maybe snippets have been released, but this is a pretty interesting thing to watch. So even if you're not a fan of the Beatles, or, you're not a devotee of the Beatles, you don't own the White Album in like 6 different formats, you'll probably still enjoy this, because it really is just people working their ass off to try to be creative in a very, being creative it's not like building a car. It's not like Henry Ford makes the assembly line. It's efficient. It moves things out. If you increase the amount of workers, you can increase the amount of cars produced, da, da, da. Doesn't work that way in music. Doesn't work that way in creativity. The inspiration has to come. It takes as long as it takes. So to have this group of people around them going, okay, we've booked this for 3 weeks from now. We need to get in there and make an album in 3 weeks, and we'll get you this equipment or that equipment, or this is working. And oh no, George has left the band. George left the band for a while. He quit, things like that. So it is a really interesting take. And I think it's well worth watching for anybody who is musically inclined, creatively inclined, because it really does just kind of break down the pressures and stuff on a creative person when it's past that point of trying to break in. When you're a creator, you have two real goals. You start your craft, you work your craft the best you can with the idea of getting into the industry or whatever industry it is, to break in, to be, to become famous. And from that point on, it's all about staying in, staying famous, staying in the game, getting the next job, the next gig, producing the next album, the next book, whatever it is. So it's a very interesting look at that, especially for a band that had been around that long and had reached these super high levels and had all this other stuff going on. They're talking about there was an arrest warrant had been issued for George because he and Ringo had gone out once after a concert and they got into a fist fight with somebody in France. So in France, there was an arrest warrant for George and the papers were covering it. People were writing about how the band was going to fall apart and they couldn't get along anymore, and they were just sticking together for the money and all of this stuff going on. And you see the band reacting to that. There's a section where they're supposed to be practicing or jamming on a new song, and Paul picks up the paper and starts reading this article about how the Beatles were falling apart and they couldn't work together anymore. And as they're doing it, the rest of the band, as he's reading it, the rest of the band is playing along, and John is singing like backing vocals to it. So it was all really fascinating, So Kyle says, Ringo got that name because he used to wear a bunch of rings for when he would get into fights. I didn't know that, but that's interesting. So, yes, Kyle.
Sorry, brass knuckles were illegal, but rings weren't.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like holding a roll of pennies used to be the thing, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, I probably talked about the Beatles more than anybody expected me to, especially anybody who knows me. Like I said, not a huge Beatles fan. There's some songs I like. I think last night watching this, I realized there's probably more music from them that I like than I think I like. Because there were certain songs I started singing along to, like Maxwell Silverhammer or Get Back, Hey Jude. You'd recognize these songs when they start playing them, and you recognize them because they're wrong, because they haven't got the right words yet. So they're just kind of working through it, or they're working through the notes, and you can hear, nope, that's not where they do the change. This is where they need to put the bridge in. They haven't put the bridge in there yet. So it's, I think if you're a Beatles fan, you probably have already watched it. If you're not a big Beatles fan, if you're someone who's like, oh yeah, there's a few songs I like me, this is a really interesting thing to watch because it really does humanize them and make you appreciate what they were trying to do. So check it out. It's on Disney Plus. It's called The Beatles Get Back, and it's a 3-part documentary. and I am 2/3 the way through the second part, so I'll probably finish that in the next couple nights. But all right, so let's wrap that up there, and we'll move on to check out tonight when we do in stores this week. It's going to be a good show, but we got a couple books that I want to point out that are coming out this week that are really fascinating to me. And I'll talk about them in length on the show, but I want to point out that there's an all new Firefly comic coming out from Boom, which I really enjoyed the story on. You don't have to be completely caught up with what Boom has been doing. This is a good jumping in point. So if you are a Serenity or Firefly fan, check out the all new Firefly #1. Harbinger, I got the 5th issue of Harbinger, and I'm really enjoying that series, where they're turning Peter Stanchik into a superhero, and the backlash from it. It's kind of an interesting story. And I don't hype this enough. I used to be a big Star Trek fan, a big Trekker. I know the name changed. I think it's Trekker. But there's a one-shot coming out today. It's called Star Trek Klingons. And it's about a mythical character from the Klingon past and what he did and how he gained this the Klingon Kahless, who you've probably heard from Worf or some of the other ones. He's the big name, big legend when it comes to the Klingons. And this is all about him and his legend. And it was a really good read. I just finished that up a few minutes ago. So definitely a couple books you want to check out going into the comic shops this week. And if you are in an area that you don't have a local comic shop, or you're visiting someplace, remember you can always check out the comic shop locator and put in your zip code of wherever you are, and they will tell you the closest comic shops. So remember, comic shop locator, they sponsor our later show, but I wanted to plug them here while we're at it. And then we're going to move on now. Tomorrow we've got hey, Kyle, you there? We're gonna have Fabrice show tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Okay, it's gonna be a recorded show because of timing, but it'll be recorded just beforehand. So Fabrice Sepolaski, who is the creator of Spider-Man Noir, the book Intertwined. He was managing editor for Humanoids for a little while, where they bring in different people. I don't know what they're doing on that. Maybe he can explain that to me. And he's got a new book coming out this week. So he's going to be on tomorrow. And then on Friday, we will talk about the last 3 episodes and conclusion of The Legend of Vox Machina Season 1. And it's pretty obvious from the end of it that there's probably going to be a Season 2. I would be very, very surprised.
Season 2 has already been confirmed by Critical Role and Amazon.
Thank you, sir. So there you go. Season 2 is in the works. And, I would like to be on it. So if anybody from Critical Role hears, I'd love to do a voice. Just one, even a background voice, just some guy that runs in. No time for love, Dr. Jones. Anything like that, I'm good. All right. You know what? Let's do this a little different today because I want to talk about Peacemaker in one big chunk. So we're going to take our break just a couple minutes early today. We'll take our break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the Peacemaker season finale right after this.
Hey, I'm Garrett Gunn. You might know me from Good Boy, Warhorns, Franklin and Gus, and you're watching The Experience.
be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop today. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. Before we jump into our big conversation, I want to just give you the 2 new bits of news that popped up. I checked them real quick before, while on the break. Something I've expected for a while now is that the upcoming Kraven movie is the Kraven the Hunter movie that has Aaron Taylor Johnson and reports of Russell Crowe being attached to it. They have added Fred Hechinger, Hechinger, from the series White Lotus, and he is set to play Sergei Kravinoff. That's Kraven's half-brother. Let me rephrase. He is set to play Kraven's half-brother, Dmitry Smer, basically the Chameleon. So they are casting the Chameleon, who is the half-brother of Kraven. So I've been kind of expecting that if they're going to do a Kraven the Hunter series, they needed to bring in the Chameleon. So the Chameleon has been cast, and it is Fred Hechinger from White Lotus. Also, in casting news, the Blade movie coming up with Mahershala Ali is just added. Mahershala Ali is being joined by, we knew Delroy Lindo was going to be in it, but now Aaron Pierre from Krypton is going to be joining the cast as well. So he played Dev M on Krypton back in 2018 and 2019, and he was in Old, the M. Night Shyamalan movie. He voiced young Mustafa in the remake of The Lion King. So he's joining the cast of Blade. So both those movies moving forward, which is always great to see. Now, let's go ahead. We're going to run the spoiler warning. I'm really messing with Kyle today, not on purpose, but I'm just kind of throwing things out there. And he's reacting pretty well, so I got to give him credit. So, because Kyle's usually doing about 6 things at once, like editing a new commercial, preparing guests for other shows, getting things ready for other shows while trying to run the show. So he's keeping up pretty good today. All right. So today we're going to talk about Peacemaker. And first thing I want to say is, hello, Hot Toys. Where the hell's my Vigilante figure? Vigilante, Peacemaker, Vigilante. Love that costume, that design. They did it really good. They kept it really close to the comic book one. It's pretty, as comic accurate as you can get. The visor might have been a little different, but other than that. And if you're wondering, yes, according to James Gunn, the Vigilante's visor is prescription. That's why anytime he takes his mask off, he then puts his glasses on. His visor is prescription, which I think is brilliant. You know, Kyle is just trying to drink an energy drink. Okay. All right. So let's talk the season finale of Peacemaker, but let's talk it from the 10,000-foot view. When I watched The Suicide Squad on HBOMax, I enjoyed it. James Gunn is a good writer and a good director. In the 2 Guardians of the Galaxy movies, he has done an amazing job of taking characters that nobody really cared about and make you care about them. And unique characters like Rocket Raccoon, Groot, who says one frickin' word all the time, Drax, who's played with no sense of metaphor or anything, no subtlety at all. They're very unique characters, and Gunn has made us care about them. He's even gotten us to care about Nebula, who started off as a bad guy. So to see what he could do in those 2 movies is pretty amazing. But here he gets an 8-episode series, and he takes a character that is pretty despicable. He's, he had the heel turn in the Suicide Squad. He killed one of the beloved characters. He gets killed, and we're all happy he gets killed. And James Gunn goes, yeah, that's the one I want to do my series about. The one that I killed, the one that nobody likes, and the one who's kind of a joke. I'm going to take him and I'm going to redeem him. And 8 episodes later, we're going to be cheering for him and happy when he tells off the Justice League. That's what he did. And he knew what he was doing because he wrote all the scripts during the pandemic and then pitched it kind of all at once. So it's not like he got the approval and everything. He put the whole thing together and then, it's mind-blowing. And you could tell he did that because he took risks that most people wouldn't take. He took a despicable character from a movie and kind of made him worse, but gave us the reason for it by introducing his dad, by introducing Augie in what has to be one of the best performances in a long time by Robert Patrick. Because, he comes across as this racist, just horrible, horrible person. But that's not that's not who Robert Patrick is. So he has to put all that aside and perform this stuff. He has to be racially insulting to the actress who's playing Detective Song, which you can be mean, but that's a dark place to have to come from. So you've got Robert Patrick playing this character, and they soft pedal it a little bit. In the first episode, I'll tell you the truth, had they not dropped all 3 episodes at once, I would have bailed. That first episode for me was hard to get through. And I've told that to a lot of people. It was painful to watch all the stuff that Chris Smith was going through, but Peacemaker was going through. It was painful. He was his life was so falling apart. He was such a loser that, I didn't want to watch him. It hurt to watch him be that bad, that dumb, that horrible. And then, even the crew around him, nobody liked him. Nobody wanted to give him a chance. They thought, here's the dumb muscle we need to do this job. And, and he was so over the top. And the only thing they could, and the brilliant thing James Gunn did was he metered him down by introducing Augie to be a worse person and introducing Vigilante to be more of a psychopath, to be like everything bad about Peacemaker is worse in these two characters. Now, Vigilante has some redeeming qualities in that he's kind of naive, and you really don't know. I mean, there might be some salvation there, and at least he's trying to take out the bad guys. Though he does seem rather flippant about, we accidentally kill the wrong person, we feel bad for a little bit, and then we move on. It's like, okay. I think he's only doing the feeling bad part because he's told to that he's supposed to. But so by creating those characters, suddenly we get a Peacemaker that can be redeemed, that is not as bad as those extremes that were introduced. And we see him over these episodes kind of getting it, kind of changing. He is affected by killing Rick Flag from the movie. He's affected by just about everything he's coming across. And we see the ultimate thing that motivated, that made him who he is, was his dad forcing he and his brother to fight each other. And by forcing, I don't mean he pushed them into a ring together and told them they had to fight. He created an environment where they believed this was the right thing to do, and that they were invincible, and that they would just fight and it would be fine and nothing bad would happen. And when it did go wrong, his dad blamed him. That's a lot of pressure and stuff. And Gunn really gives us this character that, as much as we hated him going into the series, you start understanding him, what makes him tick, and you want to start seeing him succeed. And the people around him, none of them are wonderful people. You know, they all do things that you sit back and go, wait, what? You know, Economos just, changed the registration on the car to be in Augie's instead of a Peacemaker. Well, why would he do that? And then there's a whole scene about, Peacemaker just rattling off names of who else he could have done. And it makes you wonder, well, no, I think he did that on purpose. Just like Adebayo pointed those people at Chris's dad on purpose because she knew what a racist he was. And you see these characters and they're all rebuffing him, and, and he's so awkward that as this group starts coming together, you really appreciate it, and you appreciate how much they've changed and grown. So when we get that episode that they take out the food distribution place and they work together, and when they come out, they're all kind of celebrating together, and Harcourt takes that picture and sends it to all of them, you see that they have become a team. And you're good with that. And that's the thing, is that at that point, when they find each other, this found family thing, and Gunn really loves the idea of found family, because that's what Guardians of the Galaxy is too. And it's about what Suicide Squad was too. Bloodsport and Ratcatcher 2 kind of become family at that point. And Harley and, well, King Shark is kind of questionable, and I think that's everybody who lived. But he's got this thing for this found family where you find connections to people because of they come into your life and you find that common ground. And that's something that Gunn seems to be big about. And he takes that theme into this, and he makes these characters, these are probably the worst characters he's had to work with, because even in Suicide Squad, you could see some redemptive quality about most of them. Bloodsport had his daughter, stuff like that. You had these moments where you don't really have it with these characters. They're not redeemable, but we get there, and we get so many long setup things. And that's a lot of what the finale was. I kind of look at it as a two-part finale because we had two things that had to be dealt with. We had Chris's personal and the mission. Chris's personal story was dealing with his dad, dealing with the death of his brother, and just growing as a human. And where a lot of shows would have condensed all that into the one finale, they gave that the episode 7. They gave the whole thing with Augie and stuff like that. And that was, episode 7, along with Harcourt kind of taking her place as the leader as Myrn gets taken out. And you get this. There's when Peacemaker debuted, it was along with a group called the Fighting Five. And that's kind of what this group has become, the Fighting Five. They're 5 people that all work together as a team, but it took a long time for them to become a team. And Myrn's death was that final thing that solidified it. Also, Augie's death, those 2 deaths, it brought Peacemaker into the fold. It humanized him to everybody else. When he kills his father, Economos can see what it takes out of him. Vigilante can see it. He doesn't understand it, but he sees it. And then the death of Myrn, they were all connected because of Myrn. But when he dies, it kind of means that they all had to connect to each other as a team. And that's what that final thing does. And that's what the 7th episode did. So when we go into the 8th episode, they could focus on just the team and doing what needs to be done. But so many things got paid off that didn't seem like they were important. Like when Peacemaker kept calling Economos Diebeard. Now, I can't think of anybody out there who went and saw that joke and went, oh, that's going to pay off big in the future. That was like, that's just him being a bully. That's what Peacemaker does. He bullies people based off stuff like that. Well, the Diebeard thing comes up huge in the finale. It's a scene where Economos is trying to sneak into where the butterflies are keeping the cow that they're supposed to kill, and he gets asked about it. And since he's pretending to be infected by a butterfly, he has to answer factually like a butterfly would. And in doing so, he really kind of lays bare his soul. He admits that he did it because he thought it made him look handsome, or it made him look better, and that he didn't think anybody noticed. And it didn't matter until somebody came along and was pointed out constantly. And it was just this angst that you felt for Economos at that point. And it's like, Economos' character was fine, but we got so much about him. We found out that he grew up liking Hanoi Rocks, that he even has the 11th Street Kids tattooed on his arm, that, he doesn't want to fight, but will be there for his team. He'll run in and he'll hit Judo Master with the car and take him out because that's what his job. That's what his part of the thing was. When the team was being attacked by a gorilla, he ran in there with a chainsaw and killed the gorilla. When Vigilante was about to be killed by a bunch of white supremacists, he popped up with a machine gun and took him out. He's not an action, and when they needed someone to go into the barn, he went. He's not an action guy, but he will do what is necessary for the team. And that's a lot of character growth for a character who was just almost an extra in the movie. He wasn't a big part of it. So suddenly to have him get all this screen time and to get all this character development And they did that with all of them, with Adebayo, with Harcourt, with Vigilante, and with Peacemaker. And it just really shows what a good storyteller James Gunn is, But he also keeps the humor in there as well, where Harcourt is talking to Adebayo about, no, you stay, the three of us will go in. And she's like, no, I want to go. I can do this. And she's like, no, if something happens, you're our last hope. And then, which is a great moment, but instead of just letting it rest, Gunn has Economos yell, well, what the hell am I then? And it breaks that tension. And that's what James Gunn is really good at, is that he can take us into these serious moments, but has that ability to go, not too fast. No, too far. We're gonna stay in the range. So you always feel like you're watching something fun and enjoyable and lighthearted. But when you sit back and think about the topics that he is dealing with, there's some pretty serious topics. When we find out when the butterfly that was in Goff and now in Song finally talks to Peacemaker and tries to convince him to join their side, just like they did with Judo Master, her argument is not a bad argument. She talks about how humanity as a whole won't do the things that need to be done to save the planet. And that by taking over certain people as butterflies, they can make those things happen. By taking away free will, they can actually get things done. And the knee-jerk reaction, of course, is, well, no, I don't want to give up my free will. I don't want to give up that. And that's the same reaction we've been getting in politics and stuff when it comes to stuff like mask mandates and things like that. So Gunn gets political at that moment, that basically the butterflies are the ones who, are basically saying, well, we'll take away your personal freedoms for your own good. And of course, Peacemaker kind of comes from that idea in a way. And of course, rebels against it because his vow of peace at whatever cost. He'll kill as many men, women, and children as necessary to get peace. Well, the butterflies were offering peace, and that some lives were the cost. And of course, he rejects that because he didn't believe, or that he was worried about his team at that point. So it really does come down to team and found family. But Gunn is able to get political and then bring it back to humorous in such a nice pivot. He got out of that big scene with Song as she explains all this by him going, she says, well, what is your answer? And he says, activate human torpedo, which then sends Adebayo with the helmet on again, hurtling across the barn or the underground space and into the giant cow, basically killing the cow and covering Adebayo in all this guts and goo and stuff. But I got to admit that there was this very serious moment. And as soon as he said, activate a human torpedo, and she screams as she launches across the ground, I started busting up. To me, that was hilarious. And it was this very serious scene that he had driven into, this political moment. He got out what he wanted to say, and then he brought it back to humor. He brought it back to the tone of the series. And this just really shows what Gunn can do in an extended format, what he could do in an 8-episode format that you wouldn't be able to do in a movie. These little moments that he gets, like the ending with him sitting down, the Goth butterfly shows up to get the last of the goo, of the honey stuff left, last of the food. Eagly flies off, gets a squirrel or whatever, and drops it. And the ghost of his dad sits down next to him. And you get that really weird feeling like, yeah, this is all kinds of effed up. Yeah. And there's going to be a lot to deal with in season 2. You know? But then he can do something like that. But then he also can have that moment where they're coming out of the destroyed bunker or barn at that point, and he picks up Harcourt, who we're thinking is probably dead, but hopefully not. Vigilante is on his feet again after being shot, but we know he's not doing well. Economos is having to be helped by Adebayo because he broke his leg trying to jump over a fence. And you're having that moment, and suddenly lightning strikes, and the Justice League appears. Now, I made a joke after the first 3 episodes, and I said, I am hoping that there's going to be some big DC cameo at the end. And my thing was like Superman shows up or Captain Atom shows up after everything's done, and Peacemaker goes, it's already taken care of, F off. I didn't know Gunn would actually do it at like 11 by bringing in Jason Momoa, Ezra Miller, and 2 body doubles. And originally they were going to have Batman and Cyborg in as well, and they ended up cutting those 2 characters. Now, I don't know what the reason for cutting is, but there's been footage. Kyle says, you didn't know Gunn was a regular viewer? It would surprise me. If he is, hi, James. How you doing? If you need someone for the writer's room for season 2, how you doing? Love to join you. But yeah, I think that was a really cool scene because it pays off the reminder that, yeah, this is still all connected to the big DCEU. And it goes to my problem with DC is that they don't seem to know where they're going yet. You know, we still got the Snyder Justice League, but we're going to get a different Batman, and we're going to get like 3 different Batmans in the next few months. I really like to see DC figure out what they're doing. But so my overall thought on Peacemaker, they did a great job with the finale. It's a big action piece, and they kind of wrapped up everything other than the cow and the butterfly story, so that the finale could be a big action piece, and that was awesome. So we go in there, we get the team in action, we see why Adebayo keeps saying she was made for this or born for this, and we get her turning on her mom at one point. We get Viola Davis doing a cameo and cursing, and we get Jason Momoa cursing. We get a payoff on all of the jokes on the Justice League. By the way, also, James, if you're listening, you've set it up now. Season 2 needs to have Green Arrow, and you need to get Stephen Amell to come back as Green Arrow. Stephen Amell as Green Arrow joining season 2 of Peacemaker would be absolutely perfect, and I think Amell would do it.
And did you see the Twitter feud that Stephen Amell and John Cena are having?
I saw the start of it. I saw a journalist posted that he wondered what Amell's response was, and Amell responded by saying, haven't seen it, too busy showing John Cena what real wrestling on television should look like.
I honestly think that it's a setup for a Peacemaker Green Arrow crossover, and then a Stephen Amell John Cena WWE appearance at a future forthcoming pay-per-view. Whole thing is kayfabe.
Yeah, it's wrestling hype. Absolutely, and I'm all for it. I really do want to see Stephen Amell return in Peacemaker 2, because I think that would be a great character, because Green Arrow is a hero. He was a vigilante, but he becomes a hero. And that's all Peacemaker wants to be, is seen to be as a hero. That's why he's so, talks so much smack about the Justice League. So to have a real hero join the team, to come in with a mission, and especially if they did something like go up against the League of Shadows, where you got a lot of faceless ninjas, but it would really play into these characters maybe a little better than the big cosmic stuff they've been doing. It would be neat to see them go something a little more grounded and see these guys with Green Arrow take it. That's my dream thing. That's what I came up with the other day, and I would absolutely love to see that. And I'd love to see Stephen Amell on this show. So we got the cameo I wanted, so maybe season 2. So hopefully James Gunn is watching. Okay. Well, that is it for me today. That is an incredible series for Peacemaker. Tomorrow, Fabrice Sapolsky. Thursday, we'll talk Legend of Vox Machina. I will be back in a couple hours to talk in stores this week with Kyle. And until then, stick around for Black Comic Universe with Amani Latif, and then Minute to Skim It with Miss Jen and Bean. Stay tuned. I will talk to you in a little bit. Have a good one.